All right, guys, welcome. This is Breakfast with the Brand. I am your host, Junior Frederick, and you are now tuned in to the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland to industry leading brand. If you are now coming in, I want you to do two things. Number one, put some flames in the chat. Number two, let us know where you're listening in from. I have with me the king of branding, Mr. Shaan Rais. Shaan, phenomenal morning to you.
Phenomenal morning, brother. How are you doing this morning?
Absolutely phenomenal. No complaints. It's a sunny day. So you already know I'm the last person that's
It's
gonna
always
complain.
sunny out there. What's new?
Not
What? Tell me something I don't know. Tell me something
all right.
new.
Let me debunk a myth. All right. So there's a myth going around that it's always sunny where I'm
Of
from.
course.
That's not true. Well, 90% of the time. But I'll tell you, I'll give you a joke. I'll give you a joke, Shan. So in my country, there's a joke. Anytime you listen to the news report, it always says the same thing for the last 15 years, or maybe more. Every time we listen to the news report, we could literally predict it. We could give the word ourselves. It always says, um, it says partly cloudy with a few scattered showers. I
That's what it
swear,
says all the time over there.
every single day, partly cloudy with a few scattered showers. Like the reporter
Hold on,
coming
hold
on,
on. Hold on.
that's all they ever
That's
say.
that's the joke
Yeah, but it's always the same thing. Imagine
because it's
looking
always
into the
sunny,
news
so
report.
it never changes.
It never changes. No,
Okay. That's
it's
funny.
partly cloudy.
That's a joke. I love it. That's a good joke.
Yes, sir. We used to stand as kids. We used to stand in front of the TV and pretend to give the weather. And as soon as the reporter came on, he would say, "Partly cloudy with a few scattered showers." And
Probably
he was
cloudy
just
with a
fooling
few
around.
scattered showers. Okay, got it. Good
Yeah.
stuff. Good stuff.
Yes, sir. So how's everything in New York, or rather
Beautiful,
Dubai?
beautiful.
Say
Yeah,
Dubai.
it's gorgeous. It's always gorgeous. So listen, guys, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing the right way, it doesn't rain, snow, there's no sleet. It's always sunny. It's always sunny, right? It's never bland, where there's the brand. Like it's never bland. It's always turned up. It's always phenomenal. It's always hot. We don't have a bad day. When you're doing business, we don't like leadership doesn't know what a rain out is. Like I used to in school, I used to be happy. So let me tell the truth. In school, when they would say that school is closed, I would be like, yes. I'd take my
Yeah.
mindset shift, right? Mindset shift for real, because I wasn't very successful in my youth, right? I wasn't very successful at anything but getting into trouble, right? And doing the wrong thing. So when I was young, and this was the setup for failure. This was the setup for failure. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I used to wake up in the morning and see the rain outside and be like, yes. And then we would turn on the radio and listen. I don't know if you're in New York, you remember 10-10 wins, 10-10 wins, right? So we used to turn on the radio and wait for them to say school was closed. If school was
Mhm.
closed, you were super energetic. Let's go. The day begins. Boom. Hook up with the friends, see what we can get into, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If they said that the buses were slow, but running at this, they were slow,
Yeah.
but they were running, it was like, because you knew what came next was schools may open a little bit late, like not 8:15 or 9 o'clock instead of on time. They'd be like, be careful with the rain and the snow, and you just be like, I hate this, man. You're like, I
You
hate
know,
this,
you
right?
know, uh-huh.
That's the mindset for failure. Now we turn around into adulthood, and it's like the weekends. Everybody wait for the weekends. I have an adversity towards it, right? An aversion towards the weekends because it's not work. I just spoke with somebody who was super happy that it was Tuesday. Super upset that it was Tuesday. I spoke to him on the phone. He said, I said, how's the day? He asked me, I said, phenomenal. How's your day going? He said, well, it's a Monday. I said, yeah, man, that's phenomenal. I get upset on Sundays and Saturdays. I'd love to do this, but then after that, it's kind of like meh, right? And then on Sundays, it's like
Mhm.
meh as well. And then on Mondays, I'm lit, fired up, ready to go. So it's a mindset shift.
Yeah, what's so interesting about that, Chan? I think it was the same for everybody. all around the world, whether you in Africa, the Caribbean, the US. I know we used to do the same thing. Now, back where I'm from, when it rains too heavy, like there's like one main highway and it had a bridge. When it rained too heavy, the bridge would flood and all the buses would have to have to
The
turn
bridge.
back.
One main highway, one bridge.
Yeah. So we know, like because sometimes if it's raining, we on the bus, we going to school, but we looking outside and we like, God, send the rain. Because if it rains too heavy in time, then before we reach too far out, the radio would be like, all right, all buses have to turn back. And then all the kids get a day off.
Mm.
So it's the same
He
thing.
said, God send the rain.
Yes, sir. Today's a very interesting show. I know we said we would continue where we left off
Yes.
on the last one. So I'm looking forward to that. We're about to take a break in a few seconds, but when we come back, we're gonna dive deeper into brand leadership and also tying it in with the confidence. So how can you use brand leadership to secure your success, but also how can you build your confidence by leveraging the power of brand leadership? So on
Mm.
that note, let's take a quick break. Let's
Let's
grow.
grow.
All right, guys, good morning. Welcome back. This is Breakfast with the Brand, the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland to industry leading brand. All right, I have with me the king of branding himself, Mr. Shaan Rais. Shaan, what's up? What's up? We're about to
Was
get into
good.
it.
Was good. Let's get into it. Let's
All right.
dive deep and dig in. We have a beautiful announcement coming at the end, so let's go ahead. Let's
We
get
do,
it on
yes,
the
we
road.
do. Before we dive right in, I do want to say phenomenal morning to the people tuning in. Guys, listen, I see Jasmine, I see Jennifer, see a couple other people. Listen, if you're now coming in, put some flames in the chat and also let us know where you're listening in from. All right. So, Shan, the last conversation we had on Breakfast with the Brand, we spoke a little bit about, the most recent thing with Will Smith, the situation, and we spoke about how brand leadership and more specifically coaching could be of use to people or celebrities in a similar situation. For the people listening to this now, can we recap a bit? How can brand leadership and coaching help somebody like that, or people who may be going through similar things, or people who get to a certain level of success? And now the challenge is now not how do you become successful, but how do you maintain, that level of success. So
All
what
right.
say you?
So we talked about what was recent, and it actually made me just think for a moment. I wanted to tap into something prior to that. So prior to that, the Olympics, and two phenomenal athletes, right? You guys know who I'm talking about, the track star, right? The track star. They got caught with a little bit of a peculiar substance, right? A peculiar substance in her blood, right? And now we have the situation of the basketball player, another young female, actually detained in Russia. Again, this was a one of those vape cartridges in her bag while playing ball in Russia. We had the other phenomenal gymnast who actually kind of dropped out of the Olympics for mental health reasons. Yes, very, right? So, and now we've got the slap heard around the world. And recently, Kanye West, people murmured rumors of, I'm not sure who's aware of it or not. I know it's the underpinnings, right? The conversation in certain circles is that there's a luxury facility being looked for so that he can become a better father, better man. What's going on? What's the conundrum with the adult behavior and responsibility? Okay. In sports, in basketball, in football, in swimming, in music, right? In all of these different, and even in the acting world, you have multiple coaches. They set up a system and a structure called development. So you have athletic development, you have artistic development, you have strength development. What's missing is the leadership development. And what's missing is the brand development. So there's even in music, there are coaches who help the young to develop and become. However, once they reach the pinnacle, the systems are still there for them to be able to perform. So the concentration is and the focus is on the performance as opposed to the person. So there's performance development, but no personal development. So what happens? Following the performance development strata and structure and system in scholastics and in formal arts, these individuals, young men and women, develop in these areas and they reach a pinnacle, they reach the height, they get to the penthouse. But there's no way to maintain it. There's no structure or system in place to maintain or sustain that level of performance. So after being on top of the mountain for a little while, they burn out, they break, they bust, or they have a meltdown, or what's called a breakdown. And there's something that takes place, usually a CRUX, right? Usually a CRUX, CRUX, a bursting of the bubble. And sometimes it shows up as threats on social media. Sometimes it shows up as the slap heard around the world. Sometimes it shows up as peculiar substances being used to take the edge off. The problem is that the pressure remains. So because there's no leadership development and no brand development and no consistent brand coaching, in leadership coaching, no pressure, understanding that you're in such a pressure cooker and your every move is under a microscope, there needs to be a form of consistency coaching at that high level in order to maintain it. And what's happening is that the world is just realizing that we have a lot of people who are finding success on massive mega levels, attainable, but not sustainable.
Wow. That was a lot. That was a lot. That was a lot. Guys, if you're now coming in, I want to say phenomenal morning to you. I see we have new people joining us. Coach B, Jackie, morning, Deshaun.
Phenomenal morning.
Morning, morning. Yes, Shaan, you know, that's very interesting. And I noticed a couple other things too. It's just an interesting. What I find most interesting is how they're so closely the timing, right? The timing is so close. To one, it's like one after the other. As soon as you turn around, there's somebody else doing something.
It's always been happening. It's always been happening. Let me shed a little bit more light. And when I say this, everyone's going to say, "Oh yeah, that's right." So, and this is not to point fun at a particular field or laugh at any situation at all. Mm-hmm. But everybody probably remembers the attack on Jay-Z that took place in the elevator.
Yep.
That's an example of it. Another example of it is the football player that just took off his shirt and kind of raved it around and then ran off field when he was told to play with a hurt ankle. And then there's always sports stars, basketball players, football players caught 2 o'clock in the morning with either an illegal substance or maybe even an illegal firearm in what's called the wrong place at the wrong time. But there's never a right time to do the wrong thing. Rap music. Mm-hmm. Rap music. These kids, these young individuals who are still in their developmental stages, keyword being development, are being given tons of publicity and tons of money without character development. So they're still operating as a child, no consequential thinking. It's all gas, no brakes. And this goes down, it gets deep into neuroscience and the amygdala and the development of the prefrontal cortex. I don't want to go too deep because I'll put people to sleep, right? But the prefrontal cortex, they're saying now takes about 28 years to develop, to fully develop. And that's what's responsible for consequential thinking, the prefrontal cortex. So if there's no development of the prefrontal cortex and there's no thoughts given to what happens after the action that you can't take back, you need someone there. This is why there was mentors in college and mentors in Fortune 500s to walk people through a succession plan. There's no such plan in the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, rap music, the Oscars, artistic development, the Olympics. Like there's none of that, right? They might have something sometimes called mental conditioning and mental training, mental fitness, but very few and far in between do we have the conversation about emotional fitness and emotional training, right? So we combine leadership development, brand development, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and self-regulation, the ability to know when you feel something and stop your actions before they take place in haste, in a coaching program formally called leadership development coaching and brand development coaching, because these things are absolutely needed. Because if not, then you have the tabloid page 6 meltdowns and slaps heard around the world.
Yes, sir. Now, this actually brings me to my next question. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying the conversation so far, put some flames in the chat. This brings me to my next question, which is something we touched on the last time. Coaching, leadership development, really being about self-awareness and self-regulation.
Yes, definitely.
So, are you saying that, and that what you just mentioned, that broad sort of term, emotional fitness, that sounds very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say that. So, guys,
I haven't either.
so you know what that means.
So you heard it
But
here.
anyways,
You heard it
right,
here first.
you heard it here first. So, emotional fitness, emotional regulation, self-regulation really the aim. That's what you're saying, is the aim of this kind of leadership development, basically.
Of
If I
course,
if I understand you correctly.
of course. It's a formal. Think of it as balance coaching because you need to have balance. Things take place emotionally that are not for the public, that are not for cameras. Things take place personally that are not for public consumption, for God's sakes. We all have feelings, we all have emotions, we all have things that happen to us. However, it's not for public consumption. You have to have the line that you never cross when it comes to personal and professional. It's two different things. When you've gone through some things, and as a people, we've gone through some things where we've grown up, being impoverished, not having the right educational system and things of that nature, right? Bring up what Jasmine says. Bring up what Jasmine says about the seeming intent, if you don't mind, Mr. B. Let me just read it for you guys. She says, yes. And it seems, there we go. And it seems certain kinds of people in particular seem to be set up to perform, but not maintain, so they can spin out and be taken out of circulation. And then she says it seems to be intentional. Now, that's an honest assessment. That is one woman's honest assessment. And she's a professional, high-level professional. If that's her assessment, how many other people have the same assessment? And how many people have the same experience? But I am going to be fair and mention Michael Phelps. He's also a very well-known, one of the most winningest swimmers and athletes in the field of swimming and the Olympics in high-level athleticism. And he was also caught with the same peculiar substance. And he was caught on social media and kind of moved towards the side when that happened. So I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen across the board. I do know of a young lady who was in the Olympics of another persuasion who was caught with the peculiar substance, and she wasn't banned from the Olympics like the other young woman. Right? So I want you to think, and it's not about saying this one or that one. That's not what we're here for. What we're here for is the whole individual. So there is a new term in college sports called NIL, or name, image, and likeness. And what name, image, and likeness does is it allows the players to finally become compensated for their public image. So there's no pay for play within these sports leagues. They don't allow that. However, now these young individuals are going to be able to be compensated for their testimonials, for their presence at a certain school, and for their likeness, for their name, their image, and their likeness, right? So I want you to think, as a professional, we also have name, image, and likeness, and it falls under personal branding. if there is no care taken, if there is no curation, if there is no cultivation of this personal brand, when you hear things or see things like the slap heard around the world or attacks in elevators and people being knocked out, dragged out, ran off the field, this is a public brand detonating publicly, like a bomb going off. And it happens emotionally first, inwardly, internally, and then it expresses itself externally. And then it results in multiple millions of dollars lost, sometimes freedom, sometimes lives, and it's always a scandal. It's always a scandal, and it doesn't have to be. What the plea is, and this works in business. It works in business coaching, business development coaching, leadership coaching. This is well known in Fortune 500s. Fortune 500 companies have been doing this for decades. What I'm saying is bring it to the field, bring it to the acting stage, like bring it to these different forums that are obviously showing a huge gap.
Yes, sir. And on that note, let's take a short break.
Maybe not. Let's go on.
All right, let's go on. You could press on. You know, that's a very interesting subject. I've not heard anybody speak about that as yet. But I want to sort of reverse that. I want to rewind that a little bit. What exactly is name, image, and likeness? So for my people coming in, I know you said name, image, and likeness, and you sort of related it to branding, but let's break it down a little bit. Like, let's go back to the basics. What really is name, image, and likeness?
Okay, so name, image, and likeness, again, is a new rule that has been passed for football players and athletes in the collegiate space to be compensated for their personal brand, for their image. So now what we've done is we've gone to even younger ages. That's what's happened. We've said, okay, these guys are getting rich at 20. These guys are getting rich at 18. We've heard of and we know of the people who have been not only promoted, but actually accepted in professional sports at college age, young, like 18, 17. Now what's taking place with name, image, and likeness is that even younger, while they're in college, high school, they're going to be able to be compensated to the tune of multiple six figures. And I'm sure because the budget only gets bigger, it doesn't collapse, right? So multiple 6 and 7 figures. So this numbers game is playing into the decision-making process of the youth. And it's going to become a situation where not the education is considered, but the economy and scale as opposed to substance. So where you go to school will determine whether you are, and listen to the harsh reality. The harsh reality is some families don't need that money like that. It can be a dream to perform and be on the stage or be in front of thousands of screaming football fans or get the rings and all of that good stuff. And that's fine. But there's some families in the lower income strata that are absolutely in need of these things and desperately in need of resources. So when it comes to what school they go to and what they do and are willing to do and the maturity level, do you understand the pressure to achieve?
Right.
Not scholastically, the pressure to achieve athletically is high and it equates to economic success. But what we know in most adult situations is that no more than 3 years after retirement, more than 70% of professional players declare bankruptcy. Why? It's because of their emotional maturity or lack thereof. With emotional maturity comes financial security or financial maturity. So I want you guys to equate the two, maturity and security. If you're not mature, your spending habits are going to be a little bit, loose, like a loose cannon, and you're going to make decisions that are not long term or consequential, which brings us back to the prefrontal cortex development and maturity of the emotions and the chemical regulation of the internal body. There's just something that takes place when you give someone who's young a lot. They don't have the maturity and they don't have the safeguards in place. They don't have the people. They don't have the team. They have the team to get them there, but they don't have the team to maintain them and keep them there. That's a problem. I think we can go ahead and slide off to a break right now and come back in a moment. Let's do that.
All right, guys, welcome back. This is Breakfast with the Brand, the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go from bland to industry leading brand. I have with me Mr. Shaan Rais, and we somehow arrived on that subject of name, image, and likeness. Very interesting subject. Um, I have a couple questions, right? But before we do that, I wanted to bring up a few comments. I want to first off say good morning if you just coming in. I see Deborah, I see Coach B, Jasmine, Jennifer. Phenomenal morning to you. Mr.
Phenomenal.
B, can we bring up a few of these comments from our listeners? Let's see. Let's get this one. So okay, so Jennifer says, if someone had their first 20K of disposable income, what are the first free tools, resources, etc. Um, should they invest in to sustain their success?
First 20K of disposable income. All right, so this is with the assumption that there's no tools and resources needed to get to where you're trying to go because you're already there. So let's say that. In order to sustain it, you're going to need a coach to help you stay there. In business, we know that, right? In business, we know that. But in athleticism, we don't. In rap music, we don't. in high levels of playing the game. Look at what happened with Mike Tyson, for God's sakes, and different actors that we see at a young age that are absolutely phenomenal. Everybody loves them. Everybody likes them, laughs, and they make a ton of money. And then at 18, they're washed up, intoxicated somewhere in a rehab. Back and forth. It becomes a cycle, right? So it's the coaching. It's the coaching that allows someone to sustain what they've attained. It's very important. And we know it scholastically. They create all kinds of, so I'm in a double doctorate right now, and I have all kinds of supports around me, all kinds of moral mentorship, writing coaches, oral and digital communications. There's a lot of different safeguards in place. However, when it comes to success, these kids aren't being given anything except a free rein and a good hope, like good luck.
Wow.
We'll see you on the way down, because it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Think about a plane. Think about a plane, and think about the planes in the war, because business is war. Athleticism is competition consistently. These people they never land. They never land, right? So we're going to get into it for a moment. They never land. There's never a time when it's off season, really, because you get paid in the on season for the work that you do in the off season. There's cameras all the time around you. When you get off the plane, when you're getting on the plane, there's someone on the plane taping you. If you think there's not, pick your nose and find out. It'll be on page 6, right? There's cameras all the time. So when that's the case and you're flying at a certain altitude and you can never land, what needs to happen to keep the plane above 30,000 feet?
Let me pose that question. Pose that question to the audience.
Chat. When you're flying at 30,000 feet and the plane can't land, what needs to happen in order for it to stay afloat? Put it in the chat. If you're watching this online, type the answer into the comments. What needs to happen? How do they maintain?
I want to see these answers. Let's see.
How do they maintain? Who remembers the warplane? Anyone?
Let's see.
No response.
Hold on. Let's give the people the benefit of the doubt. I know we have a very smart audience here, you know. So I think, guys, don't prove me wrong. What happens? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
How do they stay afloat? How do they stay above 30,000 feet?
I promise you, it's not a riddle. Put it in the chat. How do they stay afloat? I know you guys know this. We said this a couple episodes back. So if you've been coming consistently, then you know what the answer is.
We're on LinkedIn too.
Yes, on LinkedIn.
Maybe on somebody on LinkedIn. Check the channels over there. Where's my professionals at? Right? Business professionals. War. Where's my veterans of war?
Hold on. Let her explain that. Gotta fuel up. So Michelle,
explain
put it in the chat.
Yes, it sounds great. Yes, that's true. But how does it take place?
How does it? Not the actual technical, but just what happens on a basic level. Not anything like, you don't have to be like an aerodynamic specialist or anything, but just what happens.
Pay attention, guys. Entrepreneurs, leaders, CEOs, athletes, entertainers, pay attention.
Michelle's gonna get it. I know. There, you see, I know that there is a few. Bring that comment up. Mr. B. There is a fuel plane that came. Bring that comment up, Mr. B. Last comment from Michelle. She just put the answer there. So she says there is a fuel plane that come.
Okay, great. Now, Michelle, where does the fuel plane exist? So is the fuel plane at the same level of the player? How do they actually fuel the plane? This is the fuel plane, this is the plane. Where is the fuel plane positioned?
Shaan, that's a tough one. Shaan. I don't know.
It's not.
That's like a
Pay
pretty
attention, guys.
technical
Pay
question.
attention. You're flying at a certain level. You're performing at a certain level. You have to maintain that. A fuel plane has to come to refuel you and keep you performing at the highest possible level. Where does the fuel plane exist?
She put a response there. So she said above.
Good, because that's true. The fuel plane comes above. What does that mean? The person that needs to help maintain or refuel the player has to be playing the game to a higher level. The business coach that helps you build your business has to be performing to a higher level. They've been here before. They've done this work. They know what it looks like. This is why I went to school to get 2 master's degrees, one in industrial and organizational psychology, another one in organizational development and change. This is why I'm in 2 doctorates, one in organizational development and change and another one in leadership for change, because I knew that someone needed to play the game at a higher level. When I was existing at a lower level, I needed someone to come who was playing the game at a higher level to keep me maintaining where I was and help me go to higher heights. This is what's going on with these kids in these fields, in schools, on stage, in college. This is what's happening in the rap market. People, come on now, we know what's taking place when people lose their senses because they don't have maturity and they don't have discipline. In the worst case scenario, they die.
Yeah.
In the worst case scenario, you have a Tupac and a Biggie. Phenomenal superstars who let a little bit of extracurricular activity and some heated words take them somewhere that they couldn't come back from. Geniuses, genius level, absolutely phenomenon level. Phenomenon level, past phenomenal, phenomenon level. Phenomenon level. And there's some justification for mental health and counseling as well. And I've been in both places enough to know that the lives that have been lost didn't have to be lost. Certain gifted individuals that were playing at a super high level just needed someone to fly above them who was also playing at the same level, but even higher, to help them aspire towards higher. Because listen, when you're not challenged, you get bored. When you're at the pinnacle, you try to find things to do because no one else is playing the level playing the game at that level. So it's like, okay, I've done this. What else is impressive? There's nothing externally impressive to be done. I hope you heard what I said. When you have seemingly conquered the world, when you're the best at what you do, when you're playing the game at a level that no one else can, there's nothing more external that can be done. So you become bored. And you know what they say about boredom? They say it's the devil's workshop. So you look for things to do, and most of those things are self-destructive and counterproductive. However, if someone is there to reroute your focus from external to internal, then you can actually go back and begin to work on things that were never developed. Internal development is ongoing. It never ceases. This is why you see authors that author 60 books and keep going. This is why you see people who have tenure in college and still studying and still going. Because there's fulfillment in personal development and in personal achievement. The things that are not seen are more important than the things that are seen. And the things that are seen reflect the things that are that are internal. The external success comes from the internal work. And we're going to go to break after this. And the external explosions that you see, the disruptions that you see, are only reflections of the internal confusion and chaos. Hey guys, listen, right before you stop, right before you quit, before you throw in the towel, I want you to hear this one more time. Listen, you are who you need to be already. I'm going to tell you what they've been hiding from you. You are already who you need to be. Content you don't need any more of. You've been had enough content. What you need is context. What you need is system. You have the skill. What you need is system. You have the presence. You need the procedure. You have the promise. You need the process. I want to show you the process and the system to go from where you are to where you need to be and how to get clients finally on autopilot. Let's grow.
Welcome, guys. This is Breakfast with the Brand. Listen, it's been an amazing show. I have with me Shaan Rais, and we are now talking about name, image, likeness. We are talking about so many things, so many deep things, deep-seated challenges, problems, etc., solutions. I just want to say before we read this question, Shaan, before we read this question, hold on.
Let me take another sip on that.
Take another sip. Guys, listen, if you've been enjoying the show so far, I want you to put some flames in the chat. Let's see who's still present. Put some flames if you're still present. And also let us know where you're listening in from. I see Chicago in the building. So Michelle is listening from Chicago. Guys, definitely put it in the chat. Also, if you have any questions, as well. Hold on. I see Shaan can't wait to get to that question. So, guys, let's put it there. If you have any other questions, please put them in. I'm going to read this one right now. Okay, so Jennifer says, I'm playing devil's advocate. But what would you say to someone who said, quote, these skills should have been taught at home, unquote, especially in athletics?
That's a hard question, right? That's a rough question, right? Because we don't go this far back. We look at the 19-year-old and say he should have known better. Mm-hmm. We look at the 16-year-old and we adultify them and say they're a short adult. They say little man. Where we come from, they have a term for young boys, little man. When we address children, a lot of times we say young men and women. That's called adultification. We talked about that a couple of segments back with Leonard Cello, an expert on the topic of the penal system and the consequential system for a specific segment of the world's population, predominantly in America, right? I'll talk about me. I don't point fingers at other people. I don't want anybody to feel no kind of way, right? So I'll talk about me. I come from what's called a broken home. My mother and my father separated when I was about 5. And I don't even talk about this, so a lot of you may not know this, right? My mother and father were separated when I was about 5. They came back together when I was about 11. So I didn't know my father. I segmented that in my psychology, that part of my life. I segmented it. So when I came back in contact with him, I had no memories of him. I guess that's like self-protective psychology. I did not know the man, right? So in getting to know my father again, I would look at him. I would look at the way he moved, because as he moved, I would move. So I mimicked his movement in order to find my identity. I realized why my nose was big as it is. I realized how it looks like there's a little bend in it, right? My father had the same little bend in his nose. His hands moved the same way. He had a lot of tendencies that I had, but I did not know the man. So when I saw certain things about him, on him, I would ask him about them. I'm answering your question. Just bear with me for a moment. I'm using a story to illustrate a point. And guys, if you're in my Speaking Like a Leader course, I always say never have a point without a story and never tell a story without a point. So I'm coming to a point. My father had scars on his hands, on the outsides of his hands, scars that look like little rips and tears. So one day I said, Dad, what's the scar on your hand? Now you have to understand, when I was born, my father was 39 years old. I'm somewhere in my young 30s. And for those of you who wonder how old I am, right? I'm somewhere in my young 30s. I just left 20 years, right? I'm joking, but anyway, before I was born, my father was 39. So think of the years and the time back. That's my dad. I said, what's those scars on your hand? And he said, those were from when I was a sharecropper. See, my father comes from the last days of the plantation as a black man, the last days of the plantation and slavery, right? So he had the scars on his hands from bales of cotton. I'm answering your question. The reason I want to answer the question this way is to let people know that we are not 5 generations away from enforced slavery, right? So we don't have, and if we are 5 generations away from it, then it's because people are having children at 14 and 15 and 16, while the prefrontal cortex is still underdeveloped. So it's hard to teach a child what you don't know. And it's not by choice that you don't know. It's not by choice that we didn't know. My father didn't know because he was born into institutional slavery. So he didn't know, and he didn't have the opportunity to go to college to learn. He did not know. What he could not give me, he did not give me because he didn't love me. He didn't give it to me because he didn't know. So as a child growing up, I didn't know. As a young man in New York City trying to navigate 145th Street, I didn't know. I grew up in Harlem and made every wrong decision because I didn't know, because my mentors were the people on the corner. I wasn't raised with the band of brothers or the village that it takes to raise a child. I was raised in the scattered wasteland, and I didn't know. And what happened for me, so you know how I got here, around 30 years old, around somewhere abouts, after making all the wrong decisions over and over again and keep going into the same brick wall over and over again, I fell in love. I fell in love, and I had children at the time. And I kept hitting the same brick wall over and over again. So I made a decision. I made a conscious decision as an adult. Remember, it takes 28 years for the prefrontal cortex to develop. So at this point, I'm an adult, and I'm coming off a bad decision, suffering the consequences of it, and I'm being given an opportunity. So at that moment, I said, hold on, there's something wrong. I said, hold on, there's something wrong here. I mean well, but I keep ending up in hell. I mean well, but I keep ending up in trouble on the wrong side of every decision. judgment, penalization. And I tried something new. Thank God that I did. I tried something new, and I went back to finish something that I had never finished. And one of those things was school. It was school. I went back into education deeply. And when I say education, I don't mean just college. I mean internal education, internal fortitude. I had to go back and fix things. I had to go back and find things that were broken externally and internally. And it was from this internal excavation, this internal assessment, this internal microscopic look at the internal components of myself with people. Now, I didn't do this alone. I've had multiple coaches and multiple assistants, right? So I know how to develop because I've taken part in self-development. And this is how I changed my course and changed my situation. So my children now have a father who can teach these things to them. To your point, Jennifer, to your point, the parents need to know what they need to teach. And it's hard for someone to teach something they don't have. So as a young father in my early 20s, I didn't know this stuff. And I wasn't an example of progression. I was an example of regression, if anything, because I didn't know. However, I made a decision. And that's what we need to do as adults. We need to make a decision, not just for ourselves, but for those who come behind us. Because if we don't correct and fix what's broken and what's wrong internally, then we will never be able to correct a system or a population that needeth correction. We got children running wild because we was running wild. We expect an 18-year-old to actually know what to do and make the right decision in every case scenario. And we as adults can be held to the same standard. If we know better, we have to do better. It is our responsibility to put the safeguards in place for the young people that come behind us. And the first responsibility is that of ourselves. We have to correct and fix and go back and mend and go back and heal internally so that we can begin to heal externally. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting the coaching that you need individually so you can set up the coaching that's needed by our young people externally. Because if not, then it's a cycle. If not, then it's a cycle. And if we don't fix ourselves, then we put it on our children to grow up, go the wrong way, bump their head against the wall a million times, and then say to themselves, well, I want to change. I want to fix things. Sometimes you're not so lucky. Sometimes you're not so lucky. And these children end up in the newspapers for making bad decisions. And in the worst case scenario, they end up in graves.
Guys, put some flames in the chat. Like, I don't even know what to say. We're going to go to a break in a couple seconds. When we come back, we're going to sort of close out the shows. If you have any last questions, put it in the chat and let us know what you thought about what Shaan said. We'll be back in a few seconds. Let's go. Guys, we are back. We are back. Wow, it has been an amazing show this morning so far. I want to know what you think. So if you're looking at us right now, put it in the chat. What are your thoughts so far based on what Shan said? Jennifer, put it. Did Shan answer your question to the highest possible degree? I hope so.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, sometimes you get to
Like so many gems in what you just said.
the better the question, the better the answer.
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm gonna say. The better the question, the better the answer. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we also want to thank everybody who came
Yes,
out today.
definitely.
Also want to thank everybody who came out, everybody who put their flames in the chat, everybody who came out, they left a comment. We greatly appreciate you guys being here. We don't take it for granted.
Nope.
Um, at this point, I want to ask, does anybody have any last questions, any closing questions? Shan, it has been an amazing show. Imagine we started with one subject. I swear, guys, this is not scripted. I came here to talk about confidence. I came here to talk about confidence today, and we ended up on name, image, likeness. We ended up going all the way back, 3 generations, 2 generations. So I'm telling you, this is all just based on your feedback, based on the vibe of the room. And it's a really authentic show. I have no idea what Shan is gonna say. Shan doesn't know what I'm gonna say. Um,
Bring
and we
that
like it
bring
that
that
way.
back up, Mr. B. Bring that back
Let's
up.
see what she
Thank
said.
you.
Okay. So thank you for sharing that powerful story, Shan. That is so, so true. Sometimes we are expecting our kids to do and be someone we aren't willing to be. I'll say something to that, Shan. Something that I heard you say, and I've never forgotten, is that we can't change who our parents were, but we could always change who our kids' parents will be.
Hmm. Say that one more time.
We cannot.
I like it when I hear it. When
Yeah,
I'm not saying it. Go ahead, say that one more time. Guys, turn up your system, turn up your sound and right.
let me bring the mic a little closer. All right. So we can't change who our parents were, but we can change who our kids' parents will be. So that means you could change you. You could change you.
Be
So that's yeah, that's what I gathered from what you said.
be
You made the
responsible.
decision. You made the decision to change you, to go in, to look at who you are, what you do, and to make a you made a decision, which means you made an incision.
Mm.
You made a decision, which means you made an incision to cut off certain things, a lot of things, too
A
many things,
lot of things. A
too
lot.
many things,
A completely an
too many
identity
things,
makeover. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
too many things. And funny, it sort of ties in to what we originally started talking about, which is name, image, likeness. Name, image, likeness. And what I've gathered is the same process that you spoke about. Same process that you said that these celebrities, athletes, high performers need to go through is the same process that you went through when you had to do the reflection and cut off certain things.
I love that point. Here's another one to meet it. What got you here won't get you there, young man.
Mm.
What got you, and I do mean young man in this instance, right? And what got you here won't get you there, young woman, right? What got you to the platform, what got you to the stage, what brought you to the field, the whatever it was, the tenacity, the fervor, the passion, the purpose, the values, the hard work, the hardcore ethic, the tough guy stuff that got you through the streets, that got you through where you came from, not caring, not being concerned with what's going on in mommy and daddy room. That got you where you are now. However, that won't be what you need to take you the rest of the way. And, and if you carry that persona into the next phase of your life, you will be disqualified. That's what I want you to understand. What got you here won't get you there. You need a new skill set, coaches, I don't care what division or what sport, coaches, what got those young athletes to the performance ground will not be what takes them to the next level. You can train their bodies. You have to train their minds, and you have to train their emotions as well. Or you're going to have a child in a superhuman adult's body and in a mega superstar's salary. And that's the makings for a meltdown. That's the makings of a problem. That's like Jekyll and Hyde. You're fast and hyper performing their body for their performance, but you're not doing the intricate work that needs to be done on their mind and their emotions. And that's where the real work takes place. So don't just, and I'm not saying stop what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing and develop them physically, but pay some attention to what's not seen. Some of these people come from not traumatized backgrounds. You don't know what got them there. But do know this. What got them there, the survival skills that they use to get themselves there, it's not translatable into the next level. It's not translatable. And what happens when you think it is? Someone who plays all the roles, smiles at all the jokes, tells some of the funny jokes, and lives a straight and narrow for 20 years, has a moment, has a Philly moment, and brings Philly to the Oscars. And now everybody wants to say, hold on, what happened? And I could say a lot more that I won't. But it happens in every forum, on every stage, and on every platform. And the coaching that it would take to alleviate that pressure and give it a place to release and refocus would make that individual in those situations much more effective and bring much more results. So it's a win-win-win. It's not a hard investment. It's a win-win-win. It's not a losing investment. It's a win-win-win.
Most certainly is. I want to take a moment to bring up a few of these comments.
Please do.
Before we close. So I see we have Jackie. So phenomenal morning to you, Jackie. Jackie says, all of that totally leads back to a true understanding of confidence or lack of. Very true. I wish we had some more time. In fact, you know what? Next week, we're going to be touching on that. We're going to be touching on brand leadership, imageness. And what does branding have to do with confidence? Right? What does branding have to do with confidence? We're going to be touching on that, not this week, next week. So thank you so much, Jackie.
Bring up Coach B's statement.
Coach B. Okay.
Yep.
We don't look like what we've been through.
That is such a powerful statement. Like that put chills on me just now while you said it, right? For real, for real. Because we're looking at young people that look like adults. We're looking at young people that look like adults, and then we're judging them as adults, right? We're looking at the bicep, and we're saying, wow. We're looking at the speed and the grace, and we're like, wow, that's a phenomenal individual. Like they're all the way turned up, like they're all the way lit, like they're all the way grown. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're still young. They're still young. And they've been thrust in this pressure cooker since the age of 9 or 12. And what happens? They do the same thing. They compartmentalize. They forget things. They forget aspects of what they've been through for a later date. They save it for a later date. And then when something pops up, it triggers that latent response mechanism, that latent defensive mechanism. And then it throws up on NBC, right? Or in the party or in the bedroom or in the classroom or in the dorm room before the performance and before the drug test. Yeah, that latent performance enhancement mechanism, right? That coping mechanism. The coping mechanism takes place in the dorm room. So on the field, they could show up 1000% and perform to the best of their ability because everybody's counting on them back home and themselves. And then what happens? when they get caught or they get fleshed out or flushed out. Now it's brought to the public scene and they let everyone down. They let everyone down. They melt down. They do something that people call immature, irrational. People say, how could they have done it? They had the whole world looking at it. They had everything. How could they do it? Well, how does a comedian that had a 5-decade tenure, full family, funniest man in the world, hang themselves in a closet? It happens because of character development. It happens because of emotional development. It happens because the checks and balances were not in place. Sometimes when people make you laugh, they're crying on the inside. They're crying on the inside. And sometimes when people make you full of life, when you experience them on the screen or on the stage, and they just give you that, and you feel alive, sometimes they're dying on the inside. Coaching is not just performance-based. It is personal development, and it is person-based. It's person-centric or person-centered, not just one aspect. Performance is an aspect of personal development, but coaching is whole person-centered. So we don't focus on one aspect. We focus on the entire individual. And that's what's needed to bring this thing full 360. That's what's needed to make this thing complete. You need to focus on the whole individual and the whole person. You don't say, okay, be a phenomenal. What did they say about LeBron? They said, just dribble the ball, monkey. Come on. You don't throw all the other aspects of a person away to promote one aspect of them. When you do that, you have a Frankenstein on your hands. So let's be human. Let's be human. And let's be realistic. And let's be successful and make what's attainable sustainable. Let's grow. Thank you.